Welcome to, has it gone live? Oh, damn thing. Welcome to day 91. Just have a quick sip of my coffee. Welcome to day 91. Blimey. I mean, we're rocketing along, aren't we? Day 91. I thought today I'd talk about natural hoof care versus traditional hoof care. Oh, it's a bit dusty. And it's comparing the approaches and why we support obviously the natural method. Today's topic is one of the most fundamental, really, isn't it, of what we do of our community, because we are looking at the hoof care that Mother Nature, the hoof care that is in line with what Mother Nature designed, that incredible architect that she is, compared to what the traditional world thinks, and hence the reason why horses are in such a terrible state and with their hoof care, and so many problems such as laminitis, which isn't truly laminitis. It is inflamed laminae, but it's caused by incorrect hoof care. We've got navicular, we've got arthritis, we've got all side bone, we've got all kinds of awful things that are going on in the horse's feet, all caused by inappropriate hoof care that doesn't follow the horse's natural parameters. So today, that's what I'm going to talk about. What's the difference and why do we champion the natural method? Obviously, it's quite obvious, but I thought we'd talk about it because there is a lot of confusion out there when it comes to hoof care. And so I want to break that down to the two approaches and show you exactly why we have to follow a standardized version of hoof care that encompasses the natural foot, because if we don't, we are always going to have horses who are going to struggle, and there are going to be more that struggle than that don't. And the world is so it's gone so far down the rabbit hole that it can't see and understand what's going on, what we're talking about when it comes to the natural method. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about. Oh, my screen's gone funny. Where's everybody gone? Where are you? Right, let's talk to you all. Gosh, there's loads of you coming in already. Suzanne Scheid is, did I just put a star on you? I did. That's weird. I didn't know I could do that. That's really weird. I can star people. How interesting. Suzanne Scheid's here. Hello, with your marigold hand, top of the shop. Leah's here, second one in. Good morning. Maylin's here. Hello. Alex is here. Hello, Lindsay. Jenny Ackerstom's here. Hello. Dawn Lim says, good evening, Phoenix friends and family. We Love Pets 1000 says, hey there. Undercover Carnivore is not in the bath tonight. Hello. Well, I don't know. You might be. Gail says hello. Susie Pemberton's here. Stella Gallick's here. Good morning. Good morning. Heather Swithenbank's here. Hi, everyone. Nellie's here. Good evening. Anne's here from Stratford in Canada. Hello, says Ellen. Track to Nature says hello from West Wales, from a wet West Wales. Nikki's here. We are here. Hello. Angie Medler's here from Virginia. Andrea Grady is here. And Ulrika's here from France. Anne's also on Instagram. What are you doing? Choose one, Anne. Choose one. She's also on Instagram. And Carlos Rata's with us as well. Okay, so today we're talking about that difference, aren't we? So let's start by defining traditional hoof care, shall we? Traditional hoof care tends to follow what's been done for a very long time, centuries, in fact, largely based on horses having weak feet, so they believe, and therefore needing shoeing because they think the hooves are going to wear themselves away, and regular trimming. Or not necessarily regular trimming, but very much down to thinking about how the human pictures the ideal foot in their head and tries to effectively make that. Not standardized, although they would argue that it is, because they would argue that it's standardized to maybe the widest part of the frog or the hoof pastern axis, both of which are not usable guidelines when horses have pathological feet, and let's face it, so many do. So the key principles in traditional hoof care are, much of it is heavy reliance on shoes, if you've got a problem with the horse's foot, they always come back to shoes. They put the shoes on, they nail these shoes on, and they even call them remedial. There's nothing remedial about something that is not dynamic and organic, doesn't flex at all, and is of course metal, and you've nailed it on with metal nails. So there's nothing that is anything like the horse's natural foot when you're doing that. The belief is that shoes protect the hoof and allow the horse to walk and work and perform. And of course, when you have a horse that's not being trimmed correctly and it has poorly feet, and you come along and you stick a shoe on it and it looks like it's working now, it's not footy, immediately you think shoes have created this incredible result. But of course, the trim underneath isn't good either. And over time, eventually that horse will begin to show problems within their feet. Now, those problems may not take them down the road of being completely lame, but if you take the shoes off, you'll often find these animals are footy, which is a very big indication that you've not been getting it right, and that the diet and the management also are playing their part, because that, of course, causes inflammation throughout the whole body. I think very much traditional farriery, of course, was focusing on maintaining a specific look based on aesthetic principles, driven by that hoof pastern access. They think those are standard trimming protocols. They take too much off at the toe usually, and they adjust the heels based on theory and not biology. So they adjust the heels to get that HPA. And also because they are fearful, people have told people who's told another person, who's told another person, who's told the other person down the road, until everybody's telling everybody else that if you take the heels to the horse's natural parameters, they're too low, and horses need to build up foot at the back. And what they need is they need a strong foot, but they don't need foot that is largely inflexible by creating too much horn at the back, as in hard horn heel, and not engaging the other parts of the soft tissues at the back of the foot. But that has been traditional hoof care: too high a heel and taking the toe away. And then when we come to the hind foot, we see that the hind foot, it's very difficult for them to grow heels on the hind foot, so they end up wedging the hind feet. They do wedge the front as well, of course. They end up wedging the hind feet and not taking enough toe, bizarrely. So you end up having a situation where there's an awful lot of horses walking around the world that have hyperpositive P3s on the front, and they have largely negative P3s on the hind. So these horses are walking around incredibly imbalanced, and that's a major problem. And then they're asked to perform, and then we wonder why we have so many problems with them. Supportive interventions such as remedial shoeing, so that's what they think they're doing, putting wedges in it, etc., if a horse is struggling, pads, other external devices. These used to be seen as temporary solutions, but now they're often precautionary. Often now horses are just slapped into these remote heart bar shoes because they think it's going to prevent these animals from getting issues. But of course, the problem with that is that if we only looked at what the trims were like prior to the shoes going on, then we'd have a better idea of really how much this horse has been suffering with incorrect hoof care, because so many farriers at the moment and vets are bulking up against what we're saying, because they don't want to be the ones that have rotation on their books and have that fully landing on their mat at their front door. They don't want that, because that means that they've caused it. And above all else, they don't want to think that that's what happened. And I get that. I wouldn't want to see that either. But when you are largely using guesswork, and you are going through the toe mass, and you are leaving too much heel mass on the fronts, and you on the backs, you're not quite taking enough toe, and you're leaving too much heel, or then you decide you're going to wedge, you are guessing. You are going down a road which guesses. And what's to say that your guessing isn't going wrong quite a bit of the time? What we see a lot of horses that have different sized feet, different sized heels, different sized toes, lengths, angles, on one horse, all 4 feet can be completely different. And we know in the wild that horses are fairly symmetrical with their front feet and with their back feet. And so what we're seeing in a domestic world, when human beings are allowed to go and do what they feel and human beings are handed, then we start to see little changes start creeping in, which are blamed on the horse and not the human, largely because owners don't see it. Owners don't know what to look for. So traditional hoof care doesn't consider the hoof's natural biomechanics at all. They're looking at aesthetics. They're looking at how things look. They're going for angles. And the irony is, if you follow the horse's natural foot, you'll get the right angles anyway, the angles that the horse needs. But no, they want to be looking at creating that perfect looking foot, which often is not the foot that horse needs. Hence the reason they get into such hot water. And by doing that, they're keeping the hoof from doing what it's naturally designed to do. It also doesn't allow it doesn't always respect the hoof's anatomy and those constants, those principles that are laid out by Mother Nature, like the importance of following the soul, like understanding how important the frog is and where the frog is positioned in relation to the tip of P3, the coronary band, where that's positioned in terms of P2, and to do with the extensor tendon, and how much balance is so important. These things are not really thought about. They are sort of incidental. So it's a problem. And now we have this problem that is deeply rooted in the equine world. How are we going to change it? Well, the only way we're going to change it is by teaching owners about natural hoof care. It can be the only way that we will actually get to the point where we can make those changes. So while we're on that subject, let's go and see who else has come along. Who else is going to be making those changes? Connie's here. Hello. Oh, my voice is really croaky, isn't it? Sip of coffee. Rona's here. Hi, Lindsay from Australia. I'm still awake. Go to sleep. Teresa's here. Hello with the carrot. Garvin Ranch is here. Howdy, hey. Here while trimming. Great. Well done. Keep it up. Nice fitness. Pete's going to the gym. Hello, all, says Angela Gardberg. Monica's here. Hello, Monica. Caroline is here. Hello. God, it's really croaky. Catherine Brown. Charlie Brown is here. Hello. Tara's here. Hey, Lindsay. Lots of hearts. Sandra's here from Costa Rica, melting in the heat. I'll bet you are. Jeanette says, hi, everyone. Meta says, hi from the tractor driving in the field. How lovely. I hope you're having a lovely evening. My former farriers and vets simply didn't want to know what had finally saved my first horse. I offered to share my experience with them and zero interest was shown by the pros. Isn't it an interesting thing? It's really bizarre. Karen Davis gives us a wave. It is a bizarre thing. And I don't know. There are so many psychological little slants to this, from ego to its tradition to confirmation bias to cognitive dissonance. There are so many things that are layered in that response, which is a zero response. So let's look at natural hoof care, the natural method. What are we doing? Well, it's all about restoring and maintaining the hoof, the natural hoof, in line with its anatomical design. The goal is to respect the natural parameters that evolution and biology have set, that Mother Nature created for the horse. She didn't do her job wrong. The feet are not weak. It's what we do with them in the domestic setting that causes that problem. We want horses to be able to balance and self-maintain. So we need to make sure that their hooves are balanced. When you balance a horse's foot correctly, they will land correctly and they will start to look after their hooves correctly. When you put a foot in any trim, that sets it off on a trajectory as that hoof grows, which will just go further and further out of whack and imbalance if you don't get it balanced from the offset. And I say it's not difficult. Once you've learned balance and you practice it and practice it and practice it, you then can balance the majority of hooves. And us as experienced professionals, we can go out and balance the weirdest of hooves, because hooves will, because of that incorrect imbalanced trimming, will start to go out of whack, and then all sorts of things can happen. And it's our job to bring those feet back to that center again, back to that balanced center, that balanced natural foot that they were meant to have. The idea is it's to let the horse's hoof respond to its environment properly, and the ground, of course, learning to self-protect and self-maintain. I mean, wouldn't it be wonderful if they all did that? They're not all going to. So when we come to trim, we've got to respect those anatomical constants. We don't trim for aesthetics, we trim for function. Again, you will hear people say that that's what they're doing. And then you go, well, what's your guideline for that? And if nobody ever says the horse's actual foot, then they're not trimming for function, they're trimming for aesthetics. So this means we need to respect the sole plane, because once you start respecting the sole plane, what then happens is the horse then creates the foot and the balance that it needs. When we come to a horse, the sole can be a little bit all over the place. We start bringing it down and balancing properly, and within 2 to 3 trims, the foot is beginning to find itself again. It sounds a bit trite, but it's true. But balance is that key. And what we see a great deal of, and we've spoken about so many times, is when we remove that toe, we've got problems with the vertical depth. Basically, when I talk about vertical depth, there's not enough foot to cover all the gubbins inside, particularly at the front. There's not enough to cover P3 correctly, properly, to give enough sole depth. That's what we mean by vertical height. That's what gets reduced, and what ends up being left oftentimes with the hind feet. And with the front feet, we get an exceptionally, all over the place, all over the world, horses have heel heights that are higher than they should be. And people believe that that's how you build the back of the foot up, like I said earlier, and that's just not true. Heel height should be where that horse needs it, and that is determined by that hard sole plane, and we don't guess. But then when you come to the hind feet, you try and let the hind feet heels grow up. They don't. They tend to underrun even more, and then what happens is that people shoe or they wedge because they've not balanced correctly, and they've not balanced to the toe correctly, and then the only way that they can manage to get balance is by wedging. And ironically, as they hack away at the toe on the front feet, they seem to leave it on the hind feet. It is a strange thing. And then they feel that they're taking toe by going at it from the front, and then, of course, bull-nosing that horse's feet. So hoof care, you can spot incorrect hoof care. It's absolutely everywhere. What we're doing is we're ensuring that everything is healthy, that the bars are not infected, that the frog is not infected, that they're healthy and they are taking their part in the hoof mechanism, and that the horse's natural wear and tear is always being taken into account. We've got no supportive gadgets. That doesn't happen. We don't rely on shoes and wedges. Isn't it amazing how the world believes that there are so many horses out there that need lots of shoes and wedges, and yet we come along, we take all that gubbins off, and we're like, there you go. That's all you needed to do. You just needed to trim correctly and balance correctly. When we are told that horses can't go barefoot, we take that horse from that system, we put it into our system, we balance it correctly, horse can go barefoot. So what's that telling you? It's telling you that the prior system was wrong, and the prior system was not following those horses' natural constants. Natural hoof care is going to let the hoof work as it was designed. We focus on bringing that back to the center, don't we? We focus on restoring balance. We're not adding external support and on top of the imbalanced foot. We're allowing that foot to become stronger over time, encouraging good growth rates, encouraging that hoof mechanism to work correctly. If we respect those natural growth cycles and those growth rates, then that natural method lets that hoof strengthen as it should. Unfortunately, a lot of the time that HM get a name for being the long toe people is not because we're just not trimming. Far from it. We are trimming, but we're only able to trim what we can trim because there's been so much vertical depth been taken. There's not enough foot covering the gubbins inside at the front of the foot. And so therefore that length isn't going to put more gubbins there, if you like, or put more hoof wall there to cover that gubbins. What gubbins is a very technical term. What it's doing is allowing that sole to find better depth and allowing that hoof wall to eventually come down to a point where it is increasing that vertical depth. And it takes time and patience. Each trim that we do should support that growth rather than suppressing it. And when you chop, you suppress. You take months off the growth rates for horses, and that becomes a massive problem, because then once it starts to slow down, the heels get cracking, go faster than ever. You think they're just going at their normal rates, just that the toes slowed right down. And that's not helping the horse to become naturally sound. It's what we do. We help the horse to become naturally sound without the need for artificial interventions. You will hear farriers and vets and people that really believe in shoes because they've never seen horses cope properly without them because of what they're doing. You will hear them talk about how some horses just can't go barefoot. It's rubbish. We've heard it hundreds upon hundreds, thousands and thousands of times. We've heard it. Oh, they told me my horse couldn't go barefoot, and here it is. It's now barefoot successfully. Oh, they told me my horse would never be able to cope. It's got weak frogs. It's got brittle hoof walls. It's got this, that, and the other. And then, oh, look, it's successfully barefoot. Because you've got to get the right trim. If you don't get the right trim, of course they're going to suffer. And then poor things, they're just going down that rabbit hole then. So the key differences between our two approaches, the rest of the world and natural hoof care, is that traditional hoof care focuses on external support, mainly shoes, wedges, that sort of thing, remedial shoes. Now we've got composite materials, not boots, but which are made of composites, but composites that you can glue on and stick on. And I don't know whether you all saw in the Phoenix group not that long ago this week where we had a terrible situation with a horse that had horrible amount of prosthetic foot. I think it was bigger than its hoof itself, glued onto the bottom of this horse's foot. It's just not necessary. And what they're doing is prescribing to an aesthetic, not a functional goal. Again, they will argue that they are, but when you say, what are you following? Are you following the horse's natural foot? And they say no, then you say, then you're prescribing to an aesthetic goal with prescribed angles. You will hear people argue constantly over the palmar angle and believe it should not be ground parallel because nobody trims to the natural foot. But when we trim to the natural foot, what we find is when a horse is in supported mode, they are ground parallel most of the time, not with different angles, because that is taking x-rays, and you're taking that from x-rays of horses that are not naturally trimmed. Every time you take a horse that's not naturally trimmed, they're going to have higher heels, they're going to have a higher palmar angle. You can't base what a horse needs off that. That's just silly. So they're not looking at the biological needs of the horse, they're looking more at the aesthetic needs of the horse. They're looking at form rather than function. And this, therefore, can ignore the horse's natural wear patterns. We know that if you stick a shoe on, you have completely obliterated the natural passive and active wear patterns of that horse's foot. And that is going to, I'm afraid, I'd hate to break this to you, but that's going to affect the horse's feedback mechanisms. Whereas natural hoof care focuses on that function rather than form. We focus on biomechanical balance, growth rates that are balanced. We trim only what's needed to support function, never trimming too much or too little. Always get it spot on. That's what you're trying to do. Always respecting the horse's natural growth. There's no reliance on external support. We have to trust the hoof's own mechanisms to stay functional and healthy, and they will if you let them. We have to listen to the hoof and adjust our care based on the feedback the hoof gives. This approach looks for that progressive healing rather than short-term fixes. Because let's face it, you're sticking a shoe on because you want your horse to be sound tomorrow so you can go on that ride. That's you looking for that short-term fix. Okay, let's have a little look. The lips dry. Let's have a little look at who else has come in. Blah, 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 blah. Karen's here. Hello. Dawn says, bought the legs for Gallsworth on Friday. Bought the legs. Oh, I see. I thought you'd gone and got them. Aha. Very good. We'll see you there. Exciting, Dawn. Looking forward to Gallsworth. Says Heather, I need to order some tools for the workshop. Yes, yes, yes. Becky's here. Hello. Ali's here. Hello. Andrea Grady says, I just want to say a massive thank you. If it wasn't for the Phoenix Way and the amazing HM Pro, my boy would definitely not be here today. After watching the mini live from yesterday, I'm going to put his story up with photos and video. Yes, come on, Andrea. Let's look at it. That's brilliant news. I'm so pleased to hear that. And you've become a different person. You've become a different owner because you are now an educated owner that understands that we need to trim to function and not form. Nikki's here. I look forward to seeing your story. I do as well. Exquisite Way of Life has also joined us on Instagram. Okay, let's get this wrapped up. Why do we support the natural method? For all of those things above, which I've just talked about. At the Phoenix Way, we are going to obviously always, without doubt, and have no doubt in our mind that we are supporting natural hoof care. I never want to ever be in a situation that I was 20 years ago when I pick up a hoof and I'm not sure what I'm meant to be doing. Not because I'm not a good trimmer, but because I was putting my ideals onto that horse's foot. When I stopped doing that and I started following the horse's natural foot, all of that doubt went out of my mind. It's wonderful. I never carry any of that burden with me ever because it's the biological way. It's the horse's hoof was designed by nature. It was not designed by humans. It evolved to be strong. It evolved to be functional. It actually did evolve to be self-sustaining. Unfortunately, horses generally don't get enough movement in the domestic world. And the natural approach respects those instincts and works with them, not against them. That's what we do. We focus on long-term health, not just temporary, not short-term, long-term health. Long-term, way before you've had 3 or 4 different farriers down the road. That's not that. How many people do that? They keep getting different farriers. The horse keep going sore, and then they try another farrier, and then they try another trimmer, and then that looks different each time. And stop. We need to stop doing that, and we need to be looking at what is going to follow the natural foot. And if your hoof care professional isn't doing that, when you ask them, they're chopping off toes and leaving heels and leaving bars, then you've got to say, no, you stop making it up. Follow my horse's natural foot, because I want my horse to stick around for a long, long time. I don't want them to get damaged. Feet keep growing, folks, a lot. And so they need trimming every 6 weeks if they're not getting enough movement. And we can bugger it up very, very easily, like that. In a couple of trims, you can take a good balanced hoof and make it wrong in 2 trims, in 1 trim, if you wanted to deliberately unbalance it, which of course people accidentally do all the time. We are addressing the symptoms when we're doing rehab. Well, I say we're addressing the symptoms. We're addressing the cause, and we are allowing that horse to. We're allowing that horse to grow its natural foot. But unlike the symptoms that are addressed by traditional hoof care, they don't look at the cause. I think that's what I'm trying to say. So they're looking at those temporary fixes like shoes. And some horses, they live in shoes all their life, right? And they can't come out of them because they really literally cannot walk on their own 4 feet without those shoes applied. And owners think that that's okay, that's helping the horse. No, it's not, because you've taken away everything that's natural about that horse's foot, and then you celebrate that. That's not good. Natural hoof care works on the root cause: hoof imbalance and poor care practices. That's it. That's the Phoenix Way: hoof imbalances and poor care practices. And we focus on getting the hoof back to its natural state for lasting health, not just for convenience. That's what we are doing. This isn't for convenience, it's for lasting health. We also, at the Phoenix Way, want to empower owners. We want this natural method to give owners the tools and understandings that they need to care for their own horses themselves. It empowers them it empowers you guys to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. Taking ownership of your horse's health and learning how to read the foot, understanding its needs and adjusting the care as necessary is powerful. So powerful. Gone are the days, guys, when we rely on the hoof care professional. No. They are just coming and wielding the tools. I turn up and I want to have that conversation with my owners. I want my owners to understand exactly what I'm doing when I'm doing my hoof care. And I tell them, come here, come and have a look. Come and look at this. Look at this foot. Look, see what we're doing. Can you see those bars? Can you see how overlaid they are? Can you see how we need to take them off now? Can you see how we're going to balance? Here, have a look at balance. Oh, yeah, this is what it's about. Progress. It's not about perfection. We're never going to get perfection. If we are constantly chasing pathology, we're not going to get perfection. Perfection comes from horses that are born and not messed around with, trimmed regularly if they don't get enough movement, and balanced properly to their own natural foot. Otherwise, we're HM and the Phoenix Way are going to spend our lives chasing pathology, and therefore we're never going to get that perfection because that horse has already had problems before they come to us. So that natural method is about constant improvement. It's not about having a perfect hoof because there's no such thing. It's about understanding and respecting the journey of healing and strengthening. It aligns with the horse's true needs. Natural hoof care is always about what's best for the horse in the long run. We're not working to a system or a made-up standard. We're working to what's right for the horse, for the hoof, and for the entire body's function. Okay, so I'm going to have to hurry up because I've got dear Leah, who's watching this. Hello. I've got a lesson with her in a minute. So today's takeaway. The difference between traditional and natural hoof care comes down to one thing. It comes down to respecting the natural structure of the hoof. Natural hoof care works with nature, not against it. It respects the hoof's anatomy and biomechanics and the natural healing potential, which is huge. So here's your mini life challenge. This is your mini challenge today. Think about a time that you've been faced with a traditional hoof care method or advice that didn't seem to fit your horse. How did you respond? What are some of the ways that you could apply natural principles moving forward? Post your thoughts. Let's hear them. Okay, thank you so much for joining me. I've got a dash. I've got to see Leah now. I hope this comparison gives you a little bit more clarity about why we not believe. I hate using that word because it makes it sound like it's a belief system that doesn't follow truisms, and it is. It's just the truism of natural horse and hoof care, which is, of course, based in Mother Nature. The Phoenix Way is not about dismissing tradition. What does Anne say? Balance to the natural hoof is what's been hit or miss in my ownership's journey. Right. Okay. So the Phoenix Way is not. Let's just get that off there. Where are we? La. Phoenix Way is not about dismissing tradition, is it? It's about advancing towards what works for the horse and their natural foot. We do end up saying tradition isn't going to work. It doesn't work, but just stop doing that and just follow the natural foot. You are going on the right path. Just keep going and keep learning. The hoof is more than just one part. It's a whole part. It's a part of the whole horse. It's a window to the entire body's health, isn't it? Okay. I got a dash because I got to go on a lesson. All right. See you tomorrow. Thank you for joining me on day 91, day 92 tomorrow. I will see you then. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye-bye. Take care.